Hello, this is Nigel.
And Colin with another Encore Years podcast.
This is about retirement and learning to love it.
And today we're talking to Peter, who has built an extraordinary retirement since retiring, which is only fairly recently, and would like to find out how he did it and learn some lessons.
Hello, Colin, and hello, Nigel.
Hi. Can I start off, Peter? What did you do before retiring?
Well, I ran my own business strategy consultancy for 30 years, and that included a number of interim management assignments. I worked as finance director. I'm trained as an accountant. So I did some finance director work on an interim basis in both for-profit and non-profit sectors. In the middle of all of that, I did a master's at the Institute of Development Studies at the University of Sussex, which resulted in me ending up doing my dissertation on something called the circular economy, which then resulted in me going out to South Africa to do my research. And a year later, after I graduated, I went back to South Africa, and a group of us set up an organisation called the African Circular Economy Network. And I still am involved in that today on a voluntary basis, just after I retired a year ago. My age was at the age of 70.
What age were you when you did the Masters, Peter?
You mentioned earlier, Colin, about my 60th birthday. Well, that was organised with some of my fellow students. So it was a part-time over 2 years. And I had my 60th birthday during the course of that in particular study. So never too late. Every day is a school day. So, one thing I'd encourage your listeners, viewers, to think about is how they can develop their own learning plan once they retire.
That's good. Just such a good tip, that.
It is a good one. And Peter, what were the first 6 months like of retirement for you?
It depends how you define retirement. I define retirement as not being paid for the work you do. So over 30 years, I have done many things which I've not been paid for, but I believe have an impact, probably more than my paid work. So in the first 6 months, it was, in reality, in the last year, I'd say there's probably been more time spent with my 9 grandchildren and working on a climate initiative that we've run in our village in Sussex, which is, we started that in 2017. So that's coming up for its 10th anniversary. And as Colin will know, we set up a repair cafe here, and that inspired Colin to set up the Twickenham Repair Cafe.
Wow.
So there's a lot of connecting that goes on, which is really what we're doing now. So the first 6 months or year post that 70th birthday has really been doing less and connecting more. And we've just recently set up something called It's Down to Us, which is an intergenerational organisation with some of my fellow students from where I did my first degree in Oxford. And we're focusing on what we can do in our age of wisdom to encourage the future generations on how they can tackle the climate and environmental crisis that we're facing now. So most of what I have done in recent time is more related to climate and environmental matters.
And you mentioned, a question is advice. What advice would you give for future retirees? But you've already said one of those is set up a learning plan.
Yep.
How would you advise people to do that?
The immediate thought that comes to mind is to make sure you have enough resources for your retirement.
Yeah.
And if you haven't got enough, then keep on working. But it's not cheap to do education. I went on a course for 5 days quite recently on something called contribution analysis, and that cost £1,500. Now you've got and the masters was £9,000. So you've got to allocate enough resources and time to do these things. And as you know, Nigel, writing is not easy, and when you study, you need to write, and that can be challenging in your later years. But don't be put off, because when I first went to about my masters and met the course director, he said, we'd have to be careful here, because if you do come and you do study, we're going to have to keep our eye on you because you're older. Chris and I, who are both listening to this chap, said, well, that's an interesting thing for you to say. Most people tell me afterwards that's ageist, I should sue him, wherever he is in the world. And he, at the end of 2 years, I graduated with distinction, and my distinction, I achieved distinction. So I have to admit, I think age doesn't matter in this particular case. But be realistic about other demands on your time, because even though might not be working, you still need to allocate. And I'm probably planning my retirement more than I ever planned my own business. I taught people how to plan their business. I never planned my own business. I just let it happen, which some people could regard as a bit of a mistake. But hey, I'm here now. I'm not going to go back on that one. But I am actually sort of thinking more closely about what happens over the next few years.
That's so interesting, Pete, because the number of people we talk to who don't plan at all. So basically, you're saying you need to plan more in retirement than when you're working. That's
Well,
great.
for me, yes. And that's probably because I'm a bit of a contrarian. But that's okay, because I think we need disruptive people even in retirement. So I wouldn't I wouldn't worry about that too much. I think you need to. I've certainly had to organise myself better. And as you can see behind me, I have some bookcases. But that is legacy. Nobody's really interested in reading those books because they're out of date. But I think there's an element of I've got to clear stuff out of all sorts of things. So need to allocate time to getting rid of stuff, basically. And I would certainly recommend people to do a little bit more planning in that regard post retirement.
Just to clear their books, to clear their rubbish, the
Emails,
dated material.
all those things, and that I believe will help clear your mind. Because I think as a retiree, it does help to think new thoughts. And if you are cluttered, that doesn't really leave space for new things. I call it like the third age. So we're now moving into something where a third career, and maybe my first stage was study, second stage was earning money, third stage was now, well, what can I do with my time and resources that I've got? And you are going to be restricted because there's always going to be health issues. But to maintain, for me, maintaining my office is important. And we even set an office up for Chris, my wife, because she never really had an office before. She always worked on the dining room table. But I think having that distinct space is really helpful because you can keep everything as you want it and not really feel I've got to move everything off the kitchen table. So yeah, I would think very hard about how where the space is in the place where you live, if that's where you're going to use, because I doubt if people are going to rent an office or anything like that in their retiring years. They've probably got a bit of enough space where.
That's very interesting. I hadn't thought of many of those angles, and I'm making notes for me at the moment. I could improve. I could improve in all of those areas.
These are just off the top of my head, Nigel. If you
Oh,
ask
that's
me,
very good.
if I thought longer, so you're getting it hot off the press, and yeah, no fees attached to this advice.
Well, I actually, you're demonstrating your clear mind.
Thank you.
What happens for you over the next 10 years?
Well, I will still volunteer for organisations that I'm engaged with currently on my retirement. So those two things are going, or three things actually, is going to be Fair World Linfield, which is the climate environmental action group in our village, and we're just engaging with local councils about giving us some money to do more. So there's that climate sustainability, which I've been involved with throughout my career in different ways. So this is a natural extension of what I have been doing. And my view on what corporates should be doing when it comes to corporate social responsibility is just look at your core strengths, look at what you can do, and help people to solve the climate crisis. The second thing is this other organisation that's only recently been set up with some friends from university, and that's early days yet, but we're registering in The Hague, a non-profit organisation. So surprise, surprise, I'm probably the treasurer now, and it's really nice to go back and spend time with the people who I studied with, who some of whom I didn't really know that well then. They were all pretty sharp guys, intelligent and always out for fun, and they still are. Yet they're giving back, having spent 40 years in the steel industry or whatever it is, the car industry, because they realise that the problem that has been created with climate and environmental problems is basically created by us baby boomers. And I imagine quite a few of the people you're talking to are baby boomers. So I think it's our duty to give back and help future generations to solve the problem that we created. Thirdly, not unrelated to that, is this network that I created, co-founded in 2016. So it's just turned 10 years old, called the African Circular Economy. It's about sort of extreme sustainability. It's looking from start to finish, cradle to cradle, how we look after our resources, what we use, how to design things so that we don't actually need to use virgin resources. So we set this up in Africa when nobody else was doing that 10 years ago. And we are now represented in 42 countries with 1,200 members. And it is a remarkable achievement. Of the things that I'm most proud of is that. And going back to meet with most of the people we started with in Cape Town last week, it meant that we could celebrate the things that we've achieved coming out of nothing. I think we counted 9.5 years of volunteer time to get this thing going. And now 6 full-time staff. We've got all sorts of organisational and individual members. So it's and I think the lessons to be learned from that in retirement is to plan it so that you, even if I was spending the first 4 years, 5 years doing something for nothing, it is possible to set up significant events and then get other people to hand over so that you can retire. I'm on the advisory board, so it still means that I can go back and help as they need me. So there's an element of thought going into that, not necessarily particular planning, because a lot of things happen without you really deliberately focusing on something. If you've got a big purpose and you've got other people signed up to that, you stand a decent chance. So as Colin will know, repair cafes, we in Linfield are doing 100 repairs every month, just as you are doing, Colin, in Twickenham, because people get inspired by it. They want to make a contribution towards, reducing the amount of stuff they buy, the amount of stuff they throw away. So they're the 3 things that I've done post-retirement, let's say.
Well, I think the fact that you've inspired Colin to open up the Repair Cafe, which I've been to several times, and it's quite extraordinary, the enthusiasm, the success of Colin's venture.
What people must bear in mind with repair cafes is that it's a community activity. So even though you might not do many repairs, you're building a community around that. And it may happen in various ways. So
Yeah.
If you don't do much repairs, there's a kids' room in our cafe. So it's bringing young people into this way of this mindset. And I'm just overwhelmed by the number of people who've been volunteering over that 4-year period.
Right.
Assuming, Colin, that you actually are doing this as a real recording, because you said it was going to be for a minute and you carried on. So I assume now you'll be able to edit out this bit, this interactive bit. And if you want to, you can now start to close it, because we're up to about 15, 16 minutes now. You said it's 20 minutes. So if you want to do that, because that will save me a lot of hassle. If you did that.
That's such a good idea, Pete. I hadn't thought of it, but you've come across so
Why
well.
did you keep recording then?
It was just
You're enjoying it so much, you forgot to turn the record button.
transfixed. We couldn't stop. Should we do that, Nige?
Yep.
This is the real thing.
Real thing. How did you want to close?
Well, I normally say, now, brother, are we done?
Good.
And I say, we're done. It's encore and out. Thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you, Peter. Well, first of all, Peter, thank you very, very much for an extraordinary interview. Outstanding. Now, brother, are we done?
We are done.
We are done. Oh, brother, I see what you mean. Yes, I get it.
How's it
going to me? I'm your brother too. But thank you both very much for a most enjoyable conversation.
Brilliant.
Encore.
Fun. Thanks very much. Encore and out.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Well, what do you think of that, Nige?
Well, I thought Peter was inspiring. The first point he made was defining retirement, which is being retired from paid work.
Yeah.
Which I wouldn't have thought of that before.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the way he was talking about he spends more time planning his retirement than when he was working.
And one of the things he plans for is to clean the clutter out of your old life. And by that he meant clear the clutter of objects, but also that helps to clear the mind for new thoughts for the new life.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And his comment was just doing less, connecting more, rather like that one.
That's right. That was a good one, and I like the office space one, Colin.
That was really, yeah, really good. Have your own space. That I thought that was it was a
It's
good
very
tip.
important. And you need to have a big purpose, overriding purpose for your third career.
Yeah, and I love the way he calls it his third career. Wasn't that inspirational?
It absolutely was. So overall, an extraordinary man and an
Yeah.
extraordinary life. And that's the summary, I think, Colin, isn't it? And now,
Yes.
brother, are we done?
We're done. So encore and out.
Encore and out.